Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back. We're going to continue on with these mail tubs as if you were here in the room with me. We're just going to go through all the mail that accumulated while Frida Bean and I were up in Vermont, being treated like the royalty that we believe we are. An absolutely wonderful time. Congenial conversation, wonderful food. It was cold, of course, but it was a pretty kind of cold. Bright white snow everywhere. All right, so what have we got here? All right, this next one is... I think we've already seen this. This is... What is all this? What is all this? All right, well, I don't need any of that. This is by Jordan Kistner. This is going to come out in March. Yes, March 3rd. And this is Thin Places, Essays from In Between. Kind of muted floral color there. In Celtic folk tradition, a thin place is a site where the divisions between the physical world and the spirit world have grown slender and porous. A thin place. At thin places, the usual binaries of real and unreal, worldly and otherworldly, you and not you, break down. As Jordan Kistner writes in her stunning debut of essays, which FSG will publish in hardcover in early March, quote, "The delight of thin places is the unpredictability of their location. You can find them someplace with magic written all over, like Connemara and the Himalayas, but they also pop up in dive bars, bedrooms, hospital rooms." Okay, do they indeed. In this book, the author explores a number of situations where traditional divisions and dichotomies of everyday life become fuzzy. Okay. All right. I'm guessing, without knowing anything at all about this book, I'm guessing that not one of the essays in this book even so much as alludes to an incident in which a dichotomy is fuzzy. The 21st century, the year 2020, young people, I'm going to guess here that Jordan Kistner is young, love to see fuzziness where there isn't any. And I'm guessing that's the case here. That might explain the aesthetic decisions of the cover as well. She writes about borders, thresholds, and transitions. In her beautifully crafted title essay, she ventures into the science of deep brain stimulation, which requires an electrode to be surgically inserted inside the brain as treatment for OCD, a disorder in which relationship between the internal thoughts and the outside world grows perilous. In another essay here, the author writes about an ornate annual debutante ball in the border town of Laredo, Texas, where young Latino women dress in Revolutionary-era American costumes inspired by Martha Washington, as they mark their transition into adulthood. In her opening essay, the author writes about her own experiences with religion, finding Jesus as a young girl at a Bible camp one summer and later falling out of belief just as suddenly while remaining alert to the subtle religiosity of American secularism. Okay, well, this comes out in early March. This is actually kind of a contender as well, because against my own instincts for skepticism, that this does kind of intrigue. Aren't you intrigued? I mean, again, much will depend on the author's voice. But actually, let's talk about the author. All right, she is very young. She's written for N+1, the New York Times Magazine, The Atlantic, GQ, The Guardian, The American Scholar, The California Sunday Magazine, The New Yorker, The New Republic, The New York, Pop-Up Magazine, and Pitchfork. So, young or not, she has an unbelievable resume. Her work has received a Pushcart Prize and was selected for Best American Essays of 2016, and she teaches creative writing at Columbia University. That's impressive. And one of the essays in Thin Places is the one that was picked for Best American Essays. So that's mighty good. I'm going to put that on the same pile that those of you maybe jumping into this video without watching the previous one. I'm building a TBR as I go along here for my return to Hyde Cottage, and we had the rule of 5 about one Supreme Court case. I'm going to put Thin Places on that pile as well. I'm going to make a separate pile for the books that I'm going to read now, that I'm going to read as soon as my filming is over and the bean is taken care of. She's exhausted. She had a wonderful time, but she's exhausted from our trip. Let's see here. All right, this next one is an advance copy. This is by Edward Ball, and this is Life of a Klansman, A Family History in White Supremacy, by the author of Slaves in the Family. Some of you will know that book. That was a... let's see here. This comes out in June. It's not a March book. It comes out in June. It's the story of Ball's great-great-grandfather, Polycarp Constant Lecorne, a working-class carpenter from a white Creole family who lived in New Orleans during the turbulent years of the Civil War and Reconstruction. As the book's title suggests, Lecorne belonged to the first wave of militant white supremacists who sprang up following the war. After fighting for the Confederacy, he joined the White League, a Ku Klux-affiliated militia, and was an active participant in the post-war reign of terror against African Americans and the armed insurrection against Reconstruction, the Reconstruction government of Louisiana. Life of a Klansman is a distinguished work of what's been called microhistory. By focusing on the lived experience of one ordinary man, his ancestor, Edward Ball is able to bring to the surface a much broader story of white supremacy in America. As Ball estimates, roughly 1/2 of living white Americans today have a Ku Klux Klan affiliate somewhere in their family tree. Needless to say, most of these ancestors are not the subject of books or even acknowledgement. Many have been willfully forgotten. But as Ball forcefully affirms, it is only by engaging with this history and by acknowledging our connection to it that we can see clearly our present. That's fascinating. I don't know how that's going to resonate. This doesn't have an index. It's an advanced copy, so it doesn't have an index. But I don't know how it's going to resonate with the fact that we have a virulent and unapologetic racist in the Oval Office. And that racism has never been more mainstreamed than it is now. Than when you're the President of the United States, having Klan rallies every time he leaves the White House. That makes it a much more charged subject. So probably if this were a finished copy, the index would have Donald Trump's name in it quite often. But I'm going to have to wait. I'm going to have to wait for that. I wonder what kind of coverage this is going to get. Probably a lot. Slaves in the Family earned a lot of goodwill. Okay, well, great. This comes out in June, so I'm wondering what kind of coverage it's going to get, but it's not going to get anything from me immediately, as I'm not going to forge ahead to June except for very rare instances. So let's move on here. Let's see what this next one is. This tub seems to have almost no manila envelope. It seems to be all cardboard. Let's see here. Next one is a paperback of some kind. All right, this is an advanced copy for May. This comes out in May. This is going to be a $27 hardcover. This is Tracy O'Neill's Quotients, a novel called Quotients, requisite hideous American cover. From Belfast to boardrooms, the war on terror to the battle over data, Quotients is a complex and compelling novel that juxtaposes global systems against the minutiae of the human heart. It's the story of Jeremy Jordan, a former intelligence operative whose work for the British government in Northern Ireland during the Troubles has left him haunted. Guilt over the death of one of his informants clouds Jeremy's everyday life. Traumatized by his past, he yearns but fears intimacy in his personal life. It is the story of Alexandra Chen, who works PR at the highest level, rebranding multinational corporations and entire nations. Alexandra is no cynic, however, but a romantic and a perfectionist who is apt to drink her own Kool-Aid. While crafting a vision of a perfect world for others, she struggles to build herself the personal life she longs for. And these two hope to make a quiet home together, but struggle to find a safe space for their personal secrets. In a culture of limitless surveillance, Jeremy and Alexandra will go to great lengths to protect what is closest to them and answer the question of whether their love will be returned. The novel spans decades. And who is Tracy O'Neill when she's at home? She's the author of The Hopeful and Quotient. So this is her second book. She was named a National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. She was longlisted for a literary prize. She was awarded the Center for Fiction's Emerging Writers Fellowship. And her writing has appeared in Granta, Rolling Stone, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, Lit Hub, Bomb. Jeez Louise, all these people with fantastic resumes. That's great. Okay, fantastic. Well, it's a novel, and it's a novel that doesn't come out until mid-May, so it sounds intriguing, but again, it is not, neither one of these things is actually going to work its way onto my TBR tonight. So this next one is a finished copy, so it might. What have we got here? Oh my! Oh goodness gracious! All right, we don't get far away from Ireland, do we? Let's see here. I think we saw this already. This is a finished copy, again on March 3rd. of Stephen Pulio's Voyage of Mercy, the USS Jamestown, Irish Famine, and the remarkable story of America's first humanitarian mission. A nice hardcover. The remarkable story of the mission that inspired America to donate massive relief to Ireland during the potato famine, which sparked America's tradition of providing humanitarian aid around the world. More than 5,000 ships left Ireland during the Great Potato Famine of the 1840s, transporting the starving and destitute away from their stricken homeland, including every single one of my ancestors. The first vessel to sail in the other direction to help the millions unable to escape was the USS Jamestown, a converted warship which left Boston in March 1847 loaded with precious food for Ireland. And this is the story of that mission in detail. So once again, we have micro-history. And Stephen Pulio is a historian, teacher, public speaker, and author of 7 books, including Dark Tide, about the great molasses flood, the Boston molasses flood of 1919, that has been a viral word-of-mouth bestseller. And he is a former award-winning newspaper reporter and contributor to American History Magazine and the Boston Globe, among other publications. And he and his wife, Kate, reside in the Boston area. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I think I've had the advanced copy of this, but I haven't got to it. And it's early March, and the subject absolutely fascinates me for personal and historical reasons. So I am going to put this on the side pile of books. Now, that side pile realistically can't be any more than 3 books, and we're at 3 now. So let's see if we do some jostling. The Voyage of Mercy is the weak of the 3 because it's the furthest out. So even though the book intrigues, it might still get bumped by something else. Let's see. Oh, goodness gracious. What is this? What is this? This is from Tor. This comes out in late May. And this is Automatic Reload by Ferret Steinmetz. Someone, Mr. and Mrs. Steinmetz, named their child Ferret. And this has an action-adventure cover. She's got a panic disorder. He's got PTSD. They can both kick your ass. Okay. This is a rom-com with explosions. That's how the book describes itself. A rom-com with explosions. Matt is the top mercenary working the black market. He's your soldier's soldier with military-grade weapons instead of arms and a haunted past that keeps him awake at night. Sylvia is genetically altered to be the deadliest woman on the planet. Her only weakness is her panic disorder. Together, they are unstoppable. Automatic Reload is the genre's most unexpectedly heartfelt romantic comedy with explosions. Okay. All right. Well, I am intrigued. It doesn't come out soon enough for me to bump anything, but how could you not love that description? So, all right, Automatic Reload goes on the later pile. And let's see how we're doing here. I see a box. There's a few boxes for all these packages. And once again, I am assuming that all of you are as good as your word. You have all told me that you like these kinds of videos, so I'm going to keep doing them. Let's see what this next one is. It's an advanced copy. So probably way down the line. Early May. So this is by Linda Scott, and it is the Double X Economy, the epic potential of women's empowerment. All blurbs. Good Lord. Look at all of these blurbs. Okay, this has blurbs all over. It doesn't actually have they're letting the full-length starred Kirkus review stand in for a description. I'm not entirely trustworthy of that because it's a Kirkus reviewer who's summarizing the book. I want to hear what the author has no hand in that, whereas the author can overlook this kind of thing. Let's look at what the book itself says. For the past 10 years, the scholar and activist Linda Scott has played a central role in the rise of the women's economic empowerment movement. A coalition made up of activists, multinational corporations, global NGOs, and governments, it arose in the mid-2000s in response to new global data sets that revealed sobering, if not unexpected, conclusions about women in the economy, namely that gender inequality is a global problem and that women's economic subordination drags down national economies and fosters global crises from severe poverty to human trafficking. So the author is linking those problems with economic disparity between the genders. Okay, and this is apparently this is a debut. That's ambitious. All right, so this comes out in early May. This is an advanced copy. I think we're going to be largely against advanced copies for getting on the immediate pile, but that did sound interesting. Let's see. What on earth? Oh, okay. Well, that's not me. That's not even anybody in the building. All right, let's put that one aside then. I'll have to talk to the mailman for that. Let's see what this next one is. It's a finished copy. It's Deanna Rayburn. A lot of you will know that name. Let's see, all this stuff. Look at all this stuff. I don't need any of this. I don't need any of it. This is due in mid-March. This is A Murderous Relation by Deanna Rayburn. A very ornate cover. Everyone's favorite lepidopterist is back for another thrilling adventure in New York Times bestselling author Deanna Rayburn's latest Veronica Speedwell mystery. Rayburn is a master at spinning cleverly plotted historical mysteries that are chock full of surprise and suspense. And let's see here. And what about this book? It's telling me a lot about others. What about this book? It's Autumn 1888, and infamous serial killer Jack the Ripper is terrorizing the good people of London. A gruesome new slaying is reported nearly every day. Not true. Not true. Long fallow periods in the Ripper case. Maybe this book is part fantasy. Maybe it's elaborating on Veronica and Stoker. Those are the two characters. Have only just returned from their latest adventure when Lady Wellingtonia Beauclerk approaches them with a worrisome proposition. Prince Albert Victor, oh my God, let's carry on, who also happens to be Veronica's half-brother, is a regular visitor at Club d'Etoile, an exclusive, rather scandalous establishment where wealthy go to play at night. Its proprietress, Madame Aurora, is a powerful businesswoman of the darkest sort, and she's rumored to possess a very expensive, incriminating gift given to her by the prince. Stoker and Veronica go undercover at the brothel to receive the gift and clear the prince's name, but when another body is found during their visit, the tables turn. Could the prince have something to do with the murders, and might he have some connection to Jack the Ripper? Okay. All right, this comes out in early March. Oh, poor Prince Eddie. Prince Albert Victor was colloquially known as Prince Eddie, and he was Queen Victoria's grandson, and he was not her heir, but he was the heir to her heir. He was Prince William. Essentially, he was Prince William, except he was much more attractive and very dim. He was one of his early childhood tutors described him as essentially unteachable, basically just a dim-witted animal. But a lot of the same things have been said about his father, the future King Edward, who turned out to be very impressive when he got on the throne, I think. But there was a book about 50 years ago, maybe a little less than that, where an author put forward the claim that Prince Albert Victor was Jack the Ripper. and that the royal family, the palace, was trying to cover it up. And this is an idea that was Alan Moore took the idea and ran with it in From Hell. And there's not a single stitch of truth to it. Not one. Not one stitch of truth. Prince Albert Victor's every move was, of course, carefully documented and well known, just like the royals are today. He was in Scotland. He was not Jack the Ripper. He was not connected to Jack the Ripper. If you'd asked him at the time in 1888, if you'd said, well, Your Highness, what do you think of all this? He would have given you the most vacuous Bertie Wooster reply imaginable. I don't know why people do. Actually, I do know why. Because it'd make a great story. It'd make an absolutely great story. If it wasn't just some anonymous leather worker, if it was a prince of the realm, that would be great. But no, no. There was even a book years ago called Prince Jack that was the most hysterically funny thing in the world. This is an early May release, and the idea that somebody's going to go, I mean, it's a Jack the Ripper novel, and that's intriguing anyway, and it's a Prince Eddie novel. I think I'm going to put this on the tonight list, and we'll see. We'll win it at the end. How's that? We'll make a second we'll make a little pile of books that I want to read immediately. I can't read them all. Even I can't do all that in one day, especially since when you're away on vacation, real world stuff piles up. But we'll make that pile, and then at the end, so at the end of the next video, because we're done. We have the box left, and then we're done. We'll go on to the next one. At the end of that one, we'll pick a TBR. So I'm a real grown-up YouTuber now. I'm giving you all sorts of incentives to stick around. You gotta stay to the end, guys. Smash that like button. I will never be a real YouTuber. That will never happen. All right, so, but you people seem to like me the way I am, so I will definitely take that over being a real YouTuber. So let's see. This next one is a finished copy. This comes out on March the 2nd. This slacker. It should be March the 3rd. This is Taking America Back for God. Christian Nationalism in the United States. This is a subject. This is by Andrew Whitehead and Samuel Perry. And Christian nationalism in the United States, the revanchist, this horrible mega church thing that has revived in America in the last few years, is the subject of a few books coming out this year. This is not the only one. This is Taking America Back for God. It comes out as a $30 hardcover in early March from Oxford. Why do so many conservative Christians continue to support Donald Trump despite his many moral failings? Why do many Americans advocate so vehemently for xenophobic policies such as a border wall with Mexico? Why do so many Americans seem so unwilling to acknowledge the injustices that ethnic and racial minorities experience in the United States? Why do a sizable proportion of Americans continue to oppose women's equality in the workplace and in the home? None of the contentions in that opening paragraph are factually true. None of them. The only reason that you would pose those questions of why does such a large number of Americans overlook Donald Trump's moral failings, why does such a large number of Americans feel so, the word here is xenophobic, but it's racist. Why do so many Americans support racist policies and punitive measures at the southern border? Why? You're going down the list of things, and the majority of Americans do not support any of those things. They do not do any of those things. The majority of Americans hate Donald Trump. The majority of Americans do not ignore his moral failings and his hypocrisies. The majority of Americans do not like keeping children in concentration camps on the southern border, and on down the list. The majority of Americans certainly know that if you're not white in this country, you're up against it when it comes to reflexive racism in the workplace, and especially at the hands of the police. The majority of Americans know that. So those questions, that opening barrage of questions, is largely straw men, and it gives you an idea of what kind of subjects the book is going to go after. In their new book, the authors argue that the answer is Christian nationalism, the belief that the United States is and should be a Christian nation. This is certainly not true, despite the caving that put one nation under God in the national in the Pledge of Allegiance, and that put God on the money, God's name on the money. Despite those are legal failings, but the United States was not founded as a Christian country at all. Nor was it founded mostly by practicing Christians, and they were explicit about it. All of them were. So I know. Again, I was going to say I don't know where that claim comes from. I do know where it comes from, but it is completely false. It has always been false. And professional atheists, if you want to call it that, going back 250 years, have endlessly pointed out, you're factually wrong about that. But anyway, let's see here. At its heart, Christian nationalism is about preserving a particular kind of social order where Christians and non-Christians, native-born and immigrants, white and minorities, men and women, recognize their proper place in society. Drawing on national survey data and 50 in-depth interviews with Americans across the political spectrum, Whitehead and Perry document how Christian nationalism radically shapes what Americans think about themselves as people, what their future should look like, and how they should get there. Americans' stance towards Christian nationalism provides insight into what Americans think about immigration, Islam, gun control, police shootings, and gender roles, among many others. Okay, I am on board. I am on board. So this comes out in early March. This is awful tempting. I'm going to put it on the other pile. This is not an immediate book, but it is awful tempting. This sounds really good. And the authors, Andrew Whitehead is an associate professor of sociology at Clemson University and assistant director of the Association of Religious Data Archives. And Samuel Perry is an assistant professor of sociology and religious studies at the University of Oklahoma, and is the author of over 70 peer-reviewed journal articles and 2 books. Well-credentialed authors, in other words. So we are going to see. We are going to see. I am awful curious, but I am, since this has become suddenly a drama about what books are going to get on the list and what aren't, I'm going to put this one on the much bigger pile of books that I am not going to get to immediately. And it's there's no slight involved in that. After all, there's a Kennedy novel on that pile. I'm not going to get to that immediately either. So that is it. That is our second tub. We're about 20 neighborhood minutes apiece for these. Now we will move on. I'll stop just for a minute. I'll make a third video, and this will be our third and final back home mail tub. These are all vacation mail tubs. So I'm gonna stop right now, and then I'll be right back. Thank you, BookTube.